I'm going to be talking about the BTEC DIT, Digital Information Technology, our BTEC Tech Award in Digital Information Technology, which is included on performance measures for 2020, 2021 and 2022. So that's nice and unusual for IT qualifications to have a little bit of stability and at least 3 years where you don't have to completely start again. So welcome to everyone. I'm really happy to go off in any strange directions with this this session. We've got an hour together, and my priority is to talk to you about the DIT qualification. I hope you're not getting too nervous about the 37 slides that are in this particular presentation deck. I definitely skip some and jump around, and I'm very happy to take random questions and go off in different directions. So welcome to everyone. I'll get started. So we're going to talk about the DIT. So we're going to have a look at the three components. It's a very simple qual, no optional units or components as for some reason we've decided to call them. All compulsory, all need to be passed in order for a qualification to be successfully awarded. It does span level 1 and level 2. We're making a massive effort to give lots of resources and lots of help to people. I am very sensitive and very understanding of people who are new to BTEC and have been maybe frightened off BTEC by scaremongering and stories of huge amounts of admin, and I know in the teacher's life the last thing you need is additional admin. It's enough to get through the teaching. So if you have any worries about that along the way, please do raise them. The qualification is designed to fit in a narrow gap between Key Stage 3 subject content in the computing program of study, and so it should have no overlap with Key Stage 3, and it should have no overlap with computer science. That were the requirements that the DFE laid out in order that any qualification in the IT vocational area would be deemed qualifiable to go onto the performance tables. So it does fit into the open group in terms of performance tables. So for the performance 8, it can be added in. There are three components. The first component looks at user interface design and some project planning. It's internally assessed. Component 2 is also internally assessed and looks at data. Component 3 is an exam. It's externally assessed, which means it's an exam, and it's 40% of the qualification. So we have 60% internally assessed and 40% external assessment. So I'm just whizzing through here because these are the basic information. This is a ridiculous slide. There's far too much on there. What I can tell you is that the way that the overall qualification is graded does span level 1 and level 2. What we're looking at here is for different components. The internal components, which are component 1 and 2, have a slightly different set of grades to the external component. You can see that the external component here has 3 level 2 and 3 level 1 grade boundaries. So there are 6 distinct places and 7, I suppose, including below 1 pass. For the internal components, for some weird reason, level 2 distinction merit passes at normal, but then below that, level 1 merit and pass is all that is available. So it has 1 fewer gradation in terms of its assessments, but you'll see how that all works out a bit later on. So internal assessments, here you have the 5, and they are worth a certain number of points. So if you get a level 2 merit, whether you scraped it or whether you absolutely crushed it, Doesn't matter, you get 29 points. In the external assessment, in the exam, if you get a level 2 pass, you can get anything from 30 to 35 points. So there's going to be 2 of these plus 1 of these, and that adds up to give you the final grade in the little blue table below. And there is a grade calculator that's available on the website. The way that you calculate the overall outcome is quite straightforward, really. Just add the points and look up on the final grade. Let me have a look over here. I don't see any hands up or any questions yet, so I'll just keep going on. Yeah, in terms of performance table points, the distinction star outcome at level 2 for the qualification. Yeah, did you spot that? Distinction star, 108 points. So even though this only goes up to level 2 distinction, this to level 2 distinction, you can go to distinction star in the overall system. Steve, you seem to have found a microphone. Congrats.
Hi, you found me up. I can hear you as well now, yeah.
Tremendous, tremendous. You haven't missed anything too exciting at this stage, Steve.
Okay.
I'm going to just stick everybody's mic onto mute just so it's more comfortable for hearing. If you can put your hands up in the little toolbar on the right-hand side at any time that you want to interrupt and speak. You can also type in the chat box, and hopefully I'll spot that in the corner of my eye and be able to answer you. So we've come up to the overall grading and how they map over to 2019 performance points. You can see on the right-hand side. So unfairly, a distinction star isn't deemed a 9. Distinction is 7, and as the numbers go down there. So you can see that the level 1 is the outcome grade of 3 and below in terms of performance points. So that's how that works. Do chip in if you have any questions. So you've got 3 components. What's interesting with the 2 internal components, which are 1, which you can see in this light green color here, and 2, which is in the salmon pink. At least it's salmon pink for me. It might be khaki, who knows what it is for you. Component 1 is the top, and then component 2 here. What you see above is where elements of the component 3 unit can be mapped across and taught in parallel. So while you're doing learning aim A for component 1, you can most definitely for component 3 be in parallel teaching the theory related to learning aim A1 and A2 and so on. This is an illustration of how you could choose to parallel up over the 2 years and be teaching component 3 from the start alongside the internally assessed unit so that you're ready, say in the January of the 2nd year, to have a first attempt at the component 3 assessment. So if we took looking just at the internally assessed units, hey, can you do me a favor, everybody? Would you see if you can find your toolbar on the right-hand side and put your hands up? Quality. Look at that, magic, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to put them down now. So I've got a question. If it's okay, please bear with me. It will help how we get through here. Is there anyone that is already delivering DIT in our list of delegates today? If you already deliver, put your hand up. Okay, so two are, 2 aren't. Okay. All right, lovely. Thank you. I'll put your hands down. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, components 1 and 2. So they're both internally assessed. Right, here's another show of hands. How many of you would call yourself expert BTEC practitioners? So you know how BTEC assessment works. Anna. Okay, Anna. So you're the only one, which means that I will be, as the balance of people that don't consider themselves expert, I won't assume anything about understanding how the assessment works for the internally assessed units. Thank you. So if you're coming to a BTEC qualification from either a GCSE or other coursework based, or OCR indeed, which has a coursework and moderation form of assessment, BTEC is quite different. It has a different flow to it and a different feel. And I'll try, as we're going through this, to bring that out, because it's important to understand the distinction, and also to help allay the sometimes there's scaremongering going out about it being a horrendous admin task, and I wouldn't try to pretend for 1 minute that there isn't more admin. I think there is, but there are definite benefits as well. So in the coursework and moderation model of assessment, you sit at awarding day or results day hoping that you haven't been moderated down, hoping maybe you might have been moderated up, but that I've never known that to happen. But with the BTEC assessment model, you're doing short, sharp assessments as you go along, and you have contact with your SV, the first person that is outside of your organization that is involved in assessment. Is called the standards verifier, and you can have contact with that person all the way along as soon as they're allocated to you. Talk to them about what your plans are, what your schedules are, and you will know long before results day how your internal components have performed. So component 1 and 2, the two internal assessments, during component 1, they'll explore and user interface design development principles and investigate how to use project management techniques. In component 2, this component 2, I think, is a really interesting take on data. And I hope people don't look at it and say, okay, that's a spreadsheet unit. This component 2 is attempting to help students to understand the value of data, and the practical task that we have there is that we actually develop a dashboard using data manipulation tools. So that could use a spreadsheet and charts and other pivot tables and other complex manipulation. Or, as I think will become very popular, you could use a free product like Power BI, which is a Microsoft free tool, which you can drop data onto, and then it helps you display it in many different ways. Okay, Emma, I've got a question. When do SVs get assigned? So as soon as you register students with a BTEC, at the start of the delivery program, you have to register the students. As soon as registration of students is done so that they're entered onto the BTEC Tech Award in DIT, for example, in your center, that tells us that you need an SV to be allocated, and the registrations happen in September, October, November, and by January, February, an SV should be allocated. I mean, it would be great if it could be done quicker, but that's the reality. So February latest is when SVs get assigned, Emma. Okay, so that's the two. That's a quick talk through of of what's in those two components. We use assignment briefs to do the assessments. So what we tend to do is to do a bit of teaching. Say Learning Aim A would be taught, and then you could do a Learning Aim A assessment, and there would be an assignment brief. The assignment brief always has a fixed design. It has a vocational scenario. It has clear deadlines for the student, a handout date at which you hand the assessment to the student, and a hand-in date when you need the student to hand you something back. It has tasks in it which are mapped to learning aims and assessment criteria. And then there's clear requirements about what evidence has to be given. So an assignment brief is the vehicle that we use for assessment in BTEC. We provide, I wonder if it says it on the next slide. It doesn't. We provide authorized assignment briefs. So when you first start in a BTEC, it's quite daunting and you want the example to give you the assessment models, we provide a set of authorized assignment briefs, which you can use, but you can also, over time, as you gain confidence and as your cohorts change and local geographical situations come up, it's really nice to be able to customize those assignment briefs to fit the requirements for your center and your students. So we do provide authorized assignment briefs. They don't have a expiry date because they can be used again and again. But what we hope is that as you become confident and excited about using the BTEC assessment model, that you start to create your own. Component 1, learning aims, learning aim A, investigate user interface design for individuals and organizations. Is there a suggested assessment calendar? Absolutely, Ashley, thank you for asking that. Very early on in the relationship between you and the SV asks for an assessment plan, which is basically a calendar laid out over the delivery schedules. And when you think you're going to be doing assessments, I'm going to be doing learning aim A assessment here. You may well have done learning aim A assessment, maybe in January before your SV has even been allocated, but that, you have to just crack on and do that. But and we do have some assessment plans on the website that you can look at. Let's just have a look at the digital information technology course page. Oh, by the way, one of the documents in your materials is a thank you for your query. It's a PDF which just has links to just about everything I'm going to be talking about here now. This is it on my screen. So we're going to be looking at the spec, teaching materials, FAQs, standardization materials. Here's the AABs. So all of those links. So hopefully you don't feel, as soon as I've hung the phone up, you don't know where to find anything. So yes, we'll have a look at that. Course materials. You asked about the assessment plans. So I think they're in under course materials, teaching and learning. Assessment plan for a year 1 and component 3 in school year 2. So there's a couple of different variations. So you can certainly grab that and use it as a template and then change it however you want. So okay, so then component, what was I talking about? So learning aim A, you can stop, you can teach learning aim A and then do a learning aim A assessment. Teach learning aim B, do a learning aim B assessment. Teach learning aim C, do a C assessment. This is why, that's good because you get short, sharp assessments with your students. They don't have to retain too much knowledge to be successful in the assessments. The downside is you have to train your students to show up and deliver. If they don't hand you anything on hand-in date, if the argument and reason is good enough, you can give them a resubmission. 10 days later, they can hand you it. If on that 10 days later, they hand you nothing, they fail learning aim A, say, of component 1. It means they fail the whole qualification. On the plus side, if they're trained up and motivated and they hand you stuff, you can do learning aim A assessment, learning aim B assessment, learning aim C assessment. You can get all 3 together, and that's that component 1 done and dusted. You'd send those to your SV, or the SV would request a sample. Now, it's also possible, if you liked, and many people do this, is to chunk B and C together. So they would teach learning aim A, do a learning aim A assessment, teach B and C together, design, develop, they're very much related, and do a BC assessment. So you've taken out one of the formal assessments, and it's completely up to you how you decide to develop that program. Any other questions? So if you were to teach it, oh, we don't want to do activities, do we, on a Thursday afternoon, and this when the weather's as good as this? Let's have a look at component 2. I'm really a fan of component 2 because I do think data is the currency of our era, and you know, our young people coming into the world need to understand why it is that people like Google and Facebook are so unbelievably powerful, and what it is about our data that makes them so powerful and how they value it. And this component again can be taught in 3 chunks and assessed in 3 chunks. In fact, we have an authorized assignment brief on our website which combines all 3 learning aims into one assessment if you wanted to do it in that model as well. So investigate the role and impact of data, create a dashboard using data manipulation tools, and then draw conclusions. So that's component 2. I'm not going to do any activities. The external assessment, and it's interesting because when BTEC first started to introduce external assessment, all of the anxiety and worry was around the external assessment. I do believe that today, in terms of this Key Stage 4 qualification, for people coming to BTEC first, I feel most of the anxiety is likely to be around the internally assessed units and how that works, because it's different. When it comes to component 3, effective digital working practices, it's a written paper. There are 2 chances at it, and there are 2 sittings every year. So there's a January, February sitting and a summer sitting. So if you design your plan, if you're able to design your plan well enough, you can your cohort, even year 11s, can sit it first in the January, February session, and if they need a resit, they can do that in the summer session. But it's a standard exam paper. Now, having said that, it's an hour and 30 minutes. It's always going to be 60 marks. It's always going to be 4 tasks. It will never have multiple choice questions because DFE don't like them, didn't want it. In order to get it on the performance tables, we had to remove any. There will always be 2 6 mark questions, and there will always be 1 9 mark question, and then the balance will be 4, 3, 2 and 1 mark questions. We do have a quite tightly sorry about that. We have a tightly restricted Emma, I keep hearing this is not a spreadsheet unit. However, lots of people in Facebook groups still involve spreadsheets. Yes, Emma, it's frustrating, but you know, a spreadsheet is certainly a good tool to do data analysis with. And if your cohort are up for it and skilled enough, and you know, how often is it the comfort zone of the teacher? You know, certainly, before I'd spent some time looking at Power BI, I would have tended to spreadsheet. I'd have jumped straight into spreadsheets. Some people will jump into Microsoft Access, quite possibly, because if they're more familiar with database tools, they might want to use that. So you keep hearing it's not a spreadsheet unit. So it's really not. We don't care what tool is used to create the dashboard. You know, if you look at the assessment criteria, we're looking for students to understand how to interpret and display data, to understand the value of data, to demonstrate their ability to present it in a way that fits a vocational scenario. So yeah, thanks for the not spreadsheet unit. And I think Microsoft Power BI, I recommend taking the pain and looking at it. It really is quite a pretty solution. And I think probably accessible to so students that wouldn't necessarily get nested ifs and H lookups and V lookups and such like in a spreadsheet. The Power BI enables you to grab data and drop it, and suddenly charts appear, and some students just click and they're able to come up with data representations that, you know, I wouldn't, because I'm restricted by thinking of it in a certain old-fashioned way. So yeah, fun. and hopefully makes it all the more accessible. And like I say, there's certainly, long story short, it's more accessible. Well, I feel Power BI might well make it more accessible to Key Stage 4 students. Have a look yourself. Let me know what you think. Okay, we're talking about component 3 here, and we have a short list of command words which we're going to stick to, and the amount of marks that go alongside those command words will be closely controlled. Ways to teach. There was a slide really early on which showed that there are elements of the subject content of component 3 which are relevant to both component 1 and 2. There are some ideas here about interesting ways. Pinterest is something that one of my colleagues is very keen that we look at as a way to do it, and I can show you more about that in a minute. So where are we? 28. So we're still on time. Long story short, it's more accessible. No hands up, no questions in the chat box, so I'll crack on. Now, this is good, Anna. I apologize if this is all completely familiar to you, but for those who are coming to BTEC from other qualifications, it's very different. I know when I joined Edexcel, Pearson Edexcel, and I started to get my head around the way BTEC works, it took me some time. So here we go. We've got quality assurance. So, you know, how does the assessment work? Here on the left-hand side are people that are in your center. On the right-hand side here is the person who is outside of your center. So within your center, you've got assessors and internal verifiers. Assessors, so that would be the teacher that might mark one of the assignment briefs that a student has done. When the assessor has marked a classroom work of work, somebody checks it. That's called the internal verifier. These two roles are very much interchangeable. If there are two of you delivering DIT, this has got person A has got class 1 and person B has got class 2. They will be each other's internal verifier. And that's done on a sample basis, and the sample is decided internally. The lead subject person would be the lead internal verifier. So again, if you imagine you're a two-man team in a school, this person could be the head of department. He would also be internally verifying his colleagues' assessments, and the colleague would be internally verifying his assessments. So even though there's 3 levels here, this can easily be 2 people. Quality nominee, every center that delivers any BTEC qualification. So if your center already deliver one BTEC qualification, your center will have a quality nominee. It's often one of the senior leadership team, and or like the one that stands back slowest when they're looking for the person to take the role on. But there will be a quality nominee. If you're a new school to BTEC, completely never done it before, somebody in a senior position in the team needs to do the quality nominee role, and that role is an overseeing quality system type of person. That quality nominee has an interface with Pearson Edexcel, with the quality nominee support group, and their responsibility is to make sure that all BTECs within the center are done in a proper way. What if you've only got one person? So if you've only got one person delivering DIT, that one person is going to be the assessor, so they'll be teaching the class and they'll be marking the students' work. They'll also be the lead internal verifier, making important decisions about resubmissions and retakes. How do you manage with the internal verifier? So what we say in a situation like that, if you're as small a team as 1, then you can have a colleague, maybe from business or science, any other colleague that has any experience of doing BTEC assessment can perform the role of internal verifier. So you do your assessments at the teacher level. You look at a piece of work and you assess it as pass, merit, or distinction. The internal verifier has to look at your thought processes, look at your judgments, and verify that it looks right and appropriate. So that person doesn't necessarily have to be an IT skilled person, doesn't necessarily have to have IT skills. Of course, if there's a team of at least 2 of you, it makes it much more straightforward because you'll both intimately understand the nuances of the IT assessment criteria and the quality of the work and stuff. But if there's only one person that is going to be delivering DIT, you will need a buddy in could be sport, lots of BTECs in sport, and you will find that there'll be somebody in the center, and your quality nominee will have to help you find that person to build the team. So while there's 4 levels here internally, it could be as little as 2 people. Standards verifier works outside. Now, there's a 25-minute video. There's a link for that tutorial there. It was a discussion that I had, a training session that I had, much like we're doing today, where we really got into the nuances of how the assessment cycle works. If you feel that it would be useful, if you feel that you just don't get the way BTEC assessment works, it's well worth a 25-minute painful listen, maybe in the sun, on the hammock over the weekend. You'll have to hear my voice. Sorry about that. Great. So we've flown through all of the components. We've talked about the quality assurance and the teams. What support are we giving? So we've got this horrible slide here. Let me have a quick look. So in terms of planning your program, we've got the spec, the sample assessment materials, schemes of work, mapping documents, course planners, getting ready to teach events. Interesting teaching. In terms of training, there's no events up on the website at the moment for DIT, but there are some in the planning, so they'll pop out. If you keep in touch with me, I can let you know. In terms of your teaching, there's assessment tracking, mapping documents, internal assessment guides, and sample marked learner work. So the sample marked learner work is what we provide that helps with standardization. If I show you over here for the internally assessed unit, so now we're just in the digital information technology qualification pages, links on the documents attached. You've got the authorized assignment briefs, you've got the data files for the component 2, OSCA materials. These materials are actual training, standardization training materials, and we've got sample marked learner work here. So there's hopefully good stuff to help you get started in terms of the teaching. In terms of assessment tracking, I built a little tool here. You can see here you've got component 1 and component 2 records for students. If I take this student on component 1, this is the, I hope you can see that all right. This is the assessment grids or the assessment criteria for learning aim A, B, and C. I built this tool. I'm just double clicking the assessment criteria that I'm awarding to student surname 41. So I've double clicked these cells and it's highlighted that because I had a hard time trying to figure out why, we've got these some funny little rules in here, logic rules. So what I did was I built this, and what's interesting is, it's all very well if your students are going to go 3 distinctions, they're going to get a distinction for the overall unit, level 2 distinction. If they get a level 2 pass all the way along, they're going to end up with a level 2 pass coming out. But what they need to know is if they fail any learning aim, they end up with a with an unclassified result across that whole unit. So it's something that needs to be kept in mind, and I think sometimes showing this to students is a useful thing. What we have here is an interesting level 2 merit. It's possible, rather than getting all 3 merits, what it's saying is that the level is the learning aim C has more significance. So it's pulling up level 2 passes in learning aim A and B up to a level 2 merit overall. So when you go back to records here, this level 2 merit now is in that student's record for component 1. And now they can go to component 2. Let's get a level 2 merit there as well. We go back. So if we say the individual target is a level 2, let's say level 2 distinction, then it means that in order to get, they need 37 points from the component 3, which is level 2 merit. And then they get a level 2 distinction overall. So that's a little tool that can be used. It's available. I think it's attached to the, thank you, Emma, it looks nice. Yeah, it's on there. It's in the zip file in the materials attached to this thing. Now, in terms of authorized briefs, I showed you we've got authorized assignment briefs for both the internal components. We only have one passed paper at the moment for component 3 on the website. If you look up to the top here, now I'm flying around, please don't get frustrated if you're getting lost on where I'm going. All of the links are in the document there, and you can always just contact me if you say you missed something. So let's have a look at external assessments. So we've got sample marked learner work for one case of component 3, and that is a sample marked learner work based on the SAM, additional sample assessment material component 3. So we've got sample assessment material for component 3 and then one additional one. So there's 2 papers that are on the website now, and sample marked learner work here for one of them. So you'll see the marks and how they were applied. There's also a really nice resource on PG Online. If you're familiar with that, they provide component 3 resources for our DIT. Let's see how quickly I can find them. DIT new. So it's all component 3. Their use of the term unit is not particularly helpful, but they've got some sample papers as well, which are different to ours. I believe they're building some more. So it's well worth looking at this. That it's endorsed by Pearson, so we've checked that it's fit for purpose. I don't know what the costs are, I'm sorry, but it's something to have a look at. So where were we? Assessing and tracking. My BTEC is a thing that's well worth looking at if you're starting off in BTEC. It's a tool here where you can, you need to have a Edexcel Online account at your school, and your Edexcel Online account would need to have a, what's happening here? Would need to have a box ticked by your exams officer that says you have My BTEC access. Now this tool is very sophisticated. It enables you to build courses. So a course in the case of DIT would be create a course. You could just build a course and it would use the qualification to build the course. So like you might have one course for your year 10s, you might have another course for your year 11s. If you've got 2 distinct pathways in your school, you might build one course for your pathway A year 10s, another course for your pathway B year 10s, another one for your year pathway A year 11s. So you build the courses and they use the qualification. And then in those courses, you can drop assignment briefs, attach students, capture the assessment data, and what it will do is stop you missing any of the little bits of paper or documentation that you need along the way to capture the audit trail that is required for the BTEC assessment process. Now, I wouldn't say that my BTEC will help somebody that knows nothing about BTEC to run a BTEC program flawlessly. It will. You still will you'll be required to try and figure out how to push it along. But once you've built your course and added your students, you will be able to capture the data. And then when your SV asks for a sample of students' work, you'll be able to organize to send the student work. But any of the documents related to admin would be in my BTEC for the SV to look at. So I don't know if there are any students in this. This is a test center, so it's you end up with assignments here. Yeah, I don't think there's even any students in here. But it's a tool worth considering. You know, if you're going to have 2 or 3 classes and you don't want to get lost in the paperwork and you want something to keep you safe in that respect, my BTEC is a good tool. Yeah, no students in here. The grade calculator will let you try out different unit results and see whether it all matches up to the target. Okay, so that was a quick flick through my BTEC. It's something worth considering. There are quality assurance guides. So we do have on our website, and again, all the links are in one of the documents that I sent you. If you go to our qualifications websites, there's some really excellent reading. My trick is BTEC tools. I don't know why that works, but it seems to. BTEC assessment and verification tools. So here are a set of documents that are absolutely vital. You need to read the BTEC Center Guide to Internal Assessment. The Center Guide for Internal Verification is being rewritten and will be back up here very shortly. But these guides are very important, and they're mentioned, or they help you understand, you know, what the guidelines are with respect to feedback, what you can, what you can't say, how resubmissions work, and how resits work. What is the sample sizes? I've had a question. Look, here's a great question, great timing. I've just opened up this sample and you'll see that on the BTEC Tech Award, the sample plan is 1 unit or 1 component per year. And I think it's something like 4 or 5 students. I don't remember. SVs, you can always ask your SV, you know, as soon as they're, wow, what's this? Create. So it's RQF, program size, Tech Award. Wow, this looks fancy. What's this? Number of learners, let's say 4 to 2, 4, 9. First sample requirements, 1 component, 4 learners. Second sample, plus 4 learners per affected component. So that calculator is right here where I was saying this is an important place to go, BTEC tools. These are the documents that have to be given to the SV. So your assessment plan is there, assessment records and assignment briefs. All of these things are part of the audit trail to show that the assessment has been done properly. If you work within my BTEC, these are created automatically, or well, not automatically, but created by the tool and live in the tool. You can print them, but you don't need to. And when the SV wants to see them, instead of emailing them, to the SV or printing them and posting them to the SV just looks at your My BTEC. So that's some options. Where were we? There's a guide to writing assessments, which is nearly up. I've been trying to get that published for a while. That'll be up on this in the same place soon. Then there's a paid for resources. We have lots of best place to show you that is to go back to the DIT page, and under published resources, what you get here are the student book, which is published, paper-based, and then lots of digital resources here with different options depending on the size and makeup of your school and cohort, which ones would be the best. In general, I guess what I would say is that in BTEC, what we provide for free is schemes of work, but within that scheme of work, there won't be lesson plans, activities, and activity solutions. They come in the paid for publications. So this is a skeleton. This is a framework around which you can plan delivery, but it doesn't have the down to the lesson by lesson resources that you need if you wanted to have a fully provided set of teaching resources. You need to complement this with the paid for resources that are up here. And there are bits and pieces of all of these things that are available for free and trial, chunks of it that are available. I'm rattling through here because I want to give some time for questions. Look at that, 27. There can't be 10 more slides. Website tour, qualification page, subject page. We did that as we went along. We had a look at My BTEC. Subject advisor is me. The email address here can still be used, but it's disappearing from the website. I don't know how much longer they're going to support it. They want all customers to go through a web form, so make a note of that email address and use it while we can. Oh, and then there were some slides here for the creative media production, which I know nothing about. It's another BTEC Tech Award that is also on the performance tables for 20, 21 and 22. And it's more like CIDR. If you'd ever done CIDR, it's more about creative media. I really know nothing about the qualifications. So it's in the presentation, so please do feel free. If it looks like it might be something to if it looks like it's something that's more fitting for your cohort, then just get back to me and I'll pass you on to my colleague, subject advisor for that qualification. So we zipped through all of that on DIT. And I know it was a bit of a gallop. I hope it wasn't too dizzy making. I don't see any hands up. I'm going to ask you if you have any questions now. This is the time to chip them in. You can do it either by chat, or if you want to put your hand up, I'll hand you the mic and you can ask questions. We've got about 9 minutes. Ashley's asked, my biggest concern is we've struggled at the amount of students with OCR, with around 80 students taking the qual. How workload heavy is marking for a couple of teachers? Yeah, and keeping up with the assessments. Yeah, it's different. It's with the OCR coursework modules, it's like a constant. I'm familiar with them because I used to teach them. I'm familiar with them. They're long, drawn out work, and you get bits and pieces in drabs, and you mark it and you mark it and you mark it, and when you get towards the end you start telling them it needs to finish now, and they add a little bit more and you have to mark it again, and so you get this like coursework creep, and it is a huge workload. I understand that. with BTEC, what you do, and the danger is that the students don't believe you. And if you ever use the word coursework, I would recommend that you don't when you deliver BTEC, because you say, well, it's a formal assessment. And when you decide to do an assessment for Learning Aim A, I'd give them a practice one first and say, you've got 2 days. I've got a double lesson on a Tuesday and a single lesson on a Wednesday. So I'm going to hand this out on Tuesday. On a Wednesday, at the end of the single, you hand it back in. It's 3 hours. And they'll think, well, coursework, but so then on the end of the Wednesday, when they hand nothing in, you explain to them all that it failed, the whole thing. And then when they do the real one, hopefully they take it more seriously, but it shouldn't be more than 3-4 hours, depending on your cohort, give them the appropriate amount of time, but in general, shorter rather than longer, because it's not coursework, it's a formal assessment. So on that day that you get your assessments handed in, you get them all. And in 10 days later, if you decide to give every one of them a resubmission opportunity, that's it. So although you're doing more small assessments, the reason that the resubmission and retake opportunities in BTEC have been so strictly managed is to avoid exactly what you're discussing with coursework creep. So you're doing more smaller, sharper, shorter assessments, and the actual assessment workload is reduced, and keeping up with assessments. So, for sure with OCR, with the long projects that they do, it can be difficult because the students kind of run out of steam. They kind of lose focus and think, well, the trouble is you give a student a 14, 15, a 3-week deadline, even 3 weeks short in our minds, to them that's an eternity, and they don't think it matters anyway. So 3, 4, 5, So we failed moderation 3 times because of missed plagiarism due to workload so heavy. So that is avoided in the BTEC model, because if you're going to do the Learning Aim A assessment in 3 hours, they're under your eye those whole 3 hours. It's a double lesson and a single lesson. You sign a piece of paper to say it's their work and their work only. So if you can't reliably sign that after the 3 hours, you need to rethink it, and maybe you give them the 2 hours of the double lesson, because then it's no plagiarism. If it can be done in 2 hours, set it in one chunk. Yeah, Ashley, I hear you. I've been I taught before I joined Pearson Edexcel, and I took a cohort of 280 kids through OCR, what were they, Cambridge Nationals, and it was a horrendous effort from the teaching staff to get all of the stuff wrapped up, ready in time to get off to moderation. So the BTEC quality assurance process is different. It looks like it's going to be more work. It definitely avoids coursework creep, but it's different. And I recommend on the page that I've just put up in front of you there, that YouTube tutorial might be worth a dip into to have a look and see if you believe me. The design of the process of assessment is meant to help teachers wrap things up. But the trouble is with that, sometimes you have to tell kids, well, you haven't handed anything in, you've failed. Okay, lovely. Let's see now. We've got 2 minutes left. Ashley, thank you for your. I will enjoy telling SLT that. Well, show them the documentation. It's not like you're making it up. It is there. There's a real need to get the students to understand and I think Anna, who was on, she's ducked out, I think now. But, you know, talk to people who do deliver BTEC, and, you know, you've got leeway in a school. You know, you're not going to fail a kid who's broken their leg and missed a deadline, right? You have leeway. The LIV, lead internal verifier, has leeway to give them opportunities to be successful. So we don't do it willy-nilly, but they do have to play their part, and there's a real need to make it very, very clear to them. But, you know, hand it in. Okay, well, it's been a real pleasure. It's 1 minute to 5. I don't want to keep you any longer. Yes, Steve, thank you for your question. Steve joined late, but he's asking that, is there anything like the I and CT? So they kicked the information and creative technology off performance tables because they considered it to have too much key stage 3 content. So yeah, you may have missed where I was explaining that the DIT had to not have any key stage 3 content and had to not overlap with computer science. So there was that narrow gap of content. That's a field that we had to work in to design a qualification that would meet their requirements for performance table inclusion. And that's why it is DIT. It took us 4 times to get it right. So there isn't anything in the pipeline rather than DIT, I'm afraid. But I think it's a good qual. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. It's 5 o'clock. I hope you have a lovely evening, and thank you for giving me your time. It doesn't have to end here. You know how to contact me. Do keep in touch. All the best for now. Thank you. Bye-bye.